Hey class, Dr. Doug Brown here. Hope you're having a fantastic week. As I usually start the week off, I'd like to give some praise. Well done. Fantastic discussion this week as we examine the agents of war. You're doing a great job with the discussion. I'm very impressed with the agents that you have identified, the points that you're sharing with your peers, and the work that you're doing on your papers. I've taken a look at that as I've started grading your last week papers. I know it's Wednesday. I usually try to get those to you by Tuesday. A little delay this week, but don't worry, I'll get them to you quickly. Try to get them to you as quickly as I can. I do like to give that feedback to try to help you, so it takes a little while to do those papers. Agents of War. The thing I want you to think about this week, when it's not really noted in the discussion so much, but in the discussion on the Agents of War, what's important is that you understand those agents, what different countries can use to create agents of war. Now, the reason we do this is it more or less gives you a baseline to understand those agents, so that you do have a real good background about them. But I want you to think in terms of not just in combat. These agents can be deployed by different weapon systems rather easily in combat. But in the civilian world, as we've seen historically, it is possible to take some of these agents and deploy them. Terrorists can deploy them. It doesn't have to be a nation, a state that does this. Some of these agents we can, make in our backyard, in the kitchen sink. We can get the products at the hardware store, order them from the different places on the website, and make these. Now, it's not always very easy to do it. That's one of the challenges. I think you've seen that in the reading. It is very challenging to make these. There's two pieces to that, in that you have to have the technology and the know-how to do it. Sometimes the technology doesn't have to be very, it doesn't have to be high technology. I have to have a lot of lab equipment to do this. But the second part of that is the person manufacturing, making these agents and weaponizing them. They are susceptible to being affected by the agent, and that's one of the problems with making them in the civilian world, for terrorism, without being made in a laboratory, military lab, or a lab such as you would find at the CDC, etc. It is easy for the person making these, a terrorist, if you will, making these agents, to weaponizing them, to be infected. And that's one of the problems, is sometimes there's not been an easy way to do it without being infected. And so I think that's one of the reasons we see, or I should say, we don't see a lot of these agents being weaponized and used in the civilian world. Now, anthrax, we've talked about anthrax. That's a key agent that can be used. It's pretty easy to make, to get the product, to get that agent, to weaponize it. We've seen that, and it really depends upon the goal. If the goal is, in fact, just to terrorize and not really infect that many people, it's a pretty easy job to do. If we're going to just infect a few people, like we saw soon after 2011, I'm sorry, 2001, with those anthrax attacks, if you will, it was pretty easy to do. It was placed into an envelope, it was processed through the mail system, and then several people were affected, mail handlers. Those letters were sent to the Senate office buildings, etc. The thing is, today, the United States government, especially the post office, has put into place biological biological equipment to detect. So they have the ability to detect chemical, biological, radiological, and explosive material, whereas they didn't before. Every couple of years, I have an opportunity. I've done this for years. Every couple of years, have an opportunity to go to our general mail facility for the state. And that general mail facility handles all the letters that come into Arkansas. And different states have these. There's General Mail Facility, may be called something different, but ours is called the GMF. And those letters are processed here, and then they're sent out through the state. So they don't just go, say if you're in Philadelphia and you write a letter to Detroit, it doesn't just go to that address, instantly by truck or carrier or whatever. It goes to a general mail facility where it's processed and then sent out from there. So it's just part of a system. In the general mail facilities, when we do the hazmat exercises, we team up with the U.S. Postal Inspectors and different fire departments, our hazmat team. And so the exercise is always where a letter has been identified, where the detection equipment has caught the letter, and it can be a different agent. And then the general mail facility is shut down. We go in, we get the product, we identify it, we test it in the field using our equipment, and then it's sent out. And then at that point, a determination is made about whether or not those letters were sent elsewhere, and then the postal inspectors and the FBI and everybody gets involved and tries to identify where the letters come from. And the Postal Inspection Service acts as a team that's available to fly. They get on a Learjet and they fly anywhere in the country anytime there's something detected. So it's a pretty good system. The equipment works pretty well. There's safeguards. There's secondary systems in place if the primary system were to mess it. And then, of course, we could decontaminate, evacuate, decontaminate, etc. That's always part of our exercise. So it's pretty interesting, the technology that's involved, and maybe that's one of the reasons we haven't seen that much of it. We certainly hadn't hit the news. I don't know that it's always released, but we still see those products. Sometimes we still hear about it in the news where someone sent a letter, had anthrax in it, or maybe it was fake anthrax to someone. I'll tell you something that recently happened here. I shared the ricin with you, but in northern Louisiana, Texarkana, Arkansas, Texarkana is a pretty good sized city, and one side of it's in Texas and the other side's in Arkansas. They just call it Texarkana. Well, it sits on the Louisiana, Oklahoma, Arkansas, Texas line there. All kind of those states, all kind of around that city. And that's the major city in that area besides Shreveport, Louisiana, and in Dallas, of course. So pretty busy city. And so what happened is one of the extras, one of the co-stars, she played some role in those in several zombie movies, but she primarily starred in The Walking Dead. She played in The Walking Dead, and so she got upset at her husband. I guess he was pretty well off, had several businesses. They became estranged, and she got upset at him and wanted to get him back for having a relationship with her best friend or something. So what she did, excuse me, is she mailed letters to the president, senators, congressmen, etc., in his name, with his address to them with suspected anthrax. And it turned out not to be actual anthrax. It was a fake, but there was some powder in there, and it was a threat, and she made a threat to all of them, so she mailed it out. So FBI, Postal Inspection Service, IRS, everybody raid ATF, they raid him. They go in, they raid him, throw him to the floor. They arrest him. They go through all his businesses, his homes, his friends, and they bring him up on charges. We don't have grand juries in Arkansas on the state level, but we have them on the federal level, like everybody else. So a federal grand jury in Texarkana indicts this guy for anthrax. Well, it turns out after he's going through the process, jury trial, etc., somehow intelligence comes in that he didn't even do it. He kept saying, "Hey, I didn't do it. I don't know what you're talking about." Well, it turns out they find out she did it, and I'm not sure how they identified her as as a suspect, but she did it. So she sent the letter out. So point is, we still have this issue, whether it's actual anthrax or any other agent, or it's just a fake. And this these threats that continue to be sent out every day. We still have these different threats, and that's one of the challenges. Is that the threats continue, so we need to be aware of them. We need to be aware of how they can be weaponized on a national level by a military. Um, a state actor. And what's interesting is, though, to me, I guess, is that not just mixing this stuff up in the kitchen, if you would, lone wolves, etc., but if there's a state actor involved and they send this stuff through and it ends up on the streets of the United States, it ends up being mailed to someone, whatever the case may be. And you need to be aware of those different agents. Now, I'll tell you, on the public safety side, sometimes it seems to me that everybody has sort of gotten tired of discussing these agents. We have these classes. A lot of people have taken, terrorism awareness, AWR 160, all these other classes, and they seem to be tired of it because we don't see it that often in smaller cities. You may see it in a larger city, but some areas are just not affected. And so a lot of people have just said, look, we're tired of hearing about it. We're not taking any more classes. We don't we don't want to know about these agents. Nothing ever happens. If it does, it happens in DC. What's the big deal? There's too much emphasis being put into these agents versus, disasters, other disasters. But I'd encourage you to learn all you can. This is just a tool in the toolbox. It's not everything. It may not be anything that you're going to encounter in your career, but it is a tool that needs to be in your toolbox so that if something happens, you're aware of it. And you can provide some instructions, maybe, and play a key role as sort of a subject matter expert because your involvement, what you're learning here. So I'd encourage you to take those other classes. It's offered by your state emergency management agency, offered by FEMA, wherever you can, learn about these different agents. It really does make a difference, and there's always that potential that they can be weaponized. We don't live in a safe world. I think the world's getting more challenging when it comes to these things. I think that, probably ISIL and those different groups are in a little bit of a lull now because of the issues in Syria, but it seems to ebb and flow. So what I mean by that is eventually it's all going to come back around, and I think we're going to see more of this. So this is an opportunity for you to learn about these agents and possibly to serve a role in the future. Take the downtime and do something with that, and continue to learn everything you can and move forward. That's it. It's a great Wednesday. I hope you're doing great. I hope you've taken a look at the final. If you have any questions about that, let me know. If you want me to look at your draft, let me know. I'll try to help you with that. If you have any questions about anything in a class, let me know. I want you happy. I want you to enjoy the class. It's almost done. Excuse me. So at this point, you've already determined whether or not you're enjoying the class or you're not. But I do want you happy. I don't want you to get tired. It's easy to do that at this point in time in the class. I want you to keep moving forward, and you're doing that. You're doing an excellent job. Okay, so been about 14 minutes. I know you're tired of hearing me talk. I did want to just check in on you. I hope you're doing good. If you need something, let me know. Keep rocking. I am proud of you. You're doing a fine job. I'm always here for you if you need my help. If you're not happy, if there's something about the class or something about my instruction, involvement, feedback, whatever, if you're not happy, it is okay to tell me you're not happy so that we can get those things fixed and work on them. Obviously there's some things I can't fix, but I do try to work on that and try to get things with the class changed, etc. So call me, email me, send me a text. I'll do everything that can to help you. Otherwise, I'll check back in with you this weekend. Have a great week, and I'll see you in the discussions. Keep up the great work.